Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Um, Thank you so very much for joining us today. My name is Carlene Spry. I am the awards administrator for the Golden Crown Literary Awards. Now, I want to welcome you to the first ever series of Goldie Finalist Spotlights. First time we've ever done it. It's fabulous that you're here. Now, for those of you who are new to the Golden Crown Literary Society, the GCLS recognizes and rewards quality literary works about women who love women. And we provide learning opportunities, encouragement, and assistance to new and established writers. We have a highly respected writing academy, an annual gathering of hundreds of readers, writers, publishers, and editors. That's our annual conference, which is coming up here in July, and a monthly GCLS member-only online book club. So we invite you to learn more about the GCLS, perhaps become a member by visiting our website at goldencrown.org. Now, just a few housekeeping items before we get started. We'll have some time at the end of the session for Q&A, so please use the Zoom Q&A box and get your questions in there, and we'll do our best to get them all answered. If you run into technical issues during this time, log out and log back in. That usually resolves those issues. Now, a moment ago, I mentioned our Writing Academy. It's a really great program. So do you want to be a better writer? The GCLS Writing Academy is here to help. Whether you're looking to write your first novel, hone your skills for your fifth novel, or you just want to hang out and write things, we've got you covered. The Writing Academy gives writers a community, a mentor, and the skills and confidence to bust out to the next level of craft. There are also scholarships available, and the Writing Academy is currently accepting applications. So for more information, just go to goldencrown.org/page/WA, or just go to goldencrown.org and find education in the red ribbons, and that will take you to the education part of the program or the website. Okay, great. So that's it for our announcements. Fabulous. Let me go ahead and introduce our two authors today. So first we have Jane Fletcher, who is reading from Silver Ravens and is a finalist in science fiction fantasy. And we have N.B. Guel, and if I did not pronounce that correctly, please tell people I didn't do it right. And reading from Queerleaders, which is a finalist in young adult fiction and debut novel. Yay! Thank you both for being here. We really appreciate it. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to turn things over now to the readers. And what I'm just going to ask that you do is just very briefly tell us a little bit about who you are, introduce your reading, and then share that reading with us. Okay, and Jane, you're up first.
Hi, I'm Jane Fletcher. I'm actually lucky enough to be a previous winner of the Golden Crown Awards. I've written 12 books, all published by Bold Strokes Books. I write in the fantasy science fiction genre, and I live in southwest England with my wife. I'm reading today from Silver Ravens, which is my most recent book out and nominated for this award. Okay, I'm reading from the prologue, which is a good place to start. It takes place in the mid-17th century, which is about 200 years before the main novel kicks off in the present day. However, I wanted to pick it. I think it sets the tone for what's following in the book. So this is the prologue to Silver Ravens. I dare you. Why should I? What do I get? I'll think of something. Eleanor spoke with her head tilted coyly to one side. Her eyes glinted, taunting, teasing. The sway of her hips promised a reward that would not be forthcoming. She was playing games again. Tamsin knew it, but was unable to say no. She tore her gaze from the strand of blonde hair fluttering across Eleanor's cheek. For the sake of her pride, she should tell Eleanor to find another toy. Yet, as much as she wanted an end to the games, even more she wanted Eleanor to smile at her again. But this didn't mean she had to roll over like a puppy. You're being childish. Tamsin crossed her arms and looked away in a show of indifference. A solemn peace surrounded St. Benedict's parish church. The service was over and everyone had gone to join the revelry on the village green. She and Eleanor were alone in the graveyard, except for the pair of ravens that nested in the bell tower. You're frightened. You're frightened the devil will snatch you away. Eleanor smirked, seeing her barb hit home. No, I'm not. I just don't want to miss out. Listen, the music started. Distant laughter mingled with the sound of fiddle and drum. The maypole was back on the green after 16 long years of banishment by the Parliament and the joyless Puritans. Now Lord Protector Cromwell had gone, and there was a new King Charles. They would be dancing around the maypole for the first time since Tamsin was born. It won't take long. Eleanor caught Tamsin's hand and swung their arms to and fro like a skipping rope. As ever, her touch melted Tamsin's resolve. Rah, rah! The raven launched himself from the bell tower, cawing as he soared overhead. Eleanor jerked her hand free and raised her arm as if to ward off attack. The reaction was unexpected, bringing a sudden understanding. Eleanor had picked the dare not because it was childish and she wanted to make Tamsin play the fool, but because she was scared. She dared not do it herself. The game had changed and the challenge was irresistible. Tamsin squared her shoulders and turned to the ancient stone, sheltering by the yew trees. Hobbs Gate stood in the corner of the graveyard. Legend said it was even older than the church. Village children grew up with the stories. The devil had turned a sinner into stone. Witches danced around it naked under a full moon. Folk who slept in its shadow were never seen again. Children would squeal and shudder, pretending to be frightened. But deep down inside, everyone knew it was safe. Or so Tamsin had assumed. She smiled as she wove between the gravestones, aware of Eleanor trailing behind. The hems of their skirts brushed through the long grass. Despite the midday sun, this corner of the churchyard was cold. Hobbs Gate was a finger of granite, more than twice Tamsin's height, pointing to the sky. The grass around it was clear, as if even the gravestones were unwilling to approach. Only the yew trees seemed drawn to Hobbs Gate. Their branches twitched in the breeze, reaching out to caress it. Their weaving shadows flitted over the weathered stone. Tamsin stopped close enough to touch the raw, rough rock, pockmarked by weather. Orange lichen mottled the northern side, creating fantastic shapes like demons or faces contorted in pain. The pagan stone did not belong here, tethered to a Christian church, but it did not frighten her. You don't have to do it. Eleanor sounded scared. Tamsin glanced over her shoulder. Why not? You want me to go round it 3 times widdershins, right? That was the dare, the detail all the children's tales agreed on, but she was no longer a child. Tamsin began walking. Eleanor cowered behind a large gravestone. Self-scrutiny played no part in her nature, but she was aware of being pulled between 2 emotions. Teasing Tamsin was fun, far more so than the village boys who trailed after her making doe eyes. They were boring. Like fairground puppets, anyone could tug their strings. Whereas she was never quite sure if Tamsin would come to heel when she snapped her fingers. But now Eleanor was nervous and she did not like it. The stupid stone made her skin prickle. It was Tamsin's fault, agreeing so easily. The dare wasn't meant seriously, of course not. Tamsin should have known it. The music got louder, claiming Eleanor's attention, although the green was hidden from sight behind the houses. The dancing would be starting soon. Several lads had asked her to partner them. She had said yes to some, not that she wanted to. Who would Tamsin dance with? She was taller than most boys. Eleanor's mood brightened. Could 2 girls dance together? That would make a better dare. They should forget the nonsense with Hobbs Gate. She turned back as Tamsin began another circle. To Eleanor's surprise, bands of mist were rising from the grass, swirling around Tamsin's knees. Eleanor looked up. The sky overhead was still unbroken blue. A sudden clamour of church bells pealed out, splitting the air, driving both ravens from their roost. Eleanor gripped the gravestone for balance. Her heart hammered. But it was just the midday chimes, the same as every day, although duller than normal, as if muffled by fog. The ravens circled the bell tower. A feather drifted down and landed at Eleanor's feet. a black feather dark as Tamsin's hair. The prickling returned sharper than before. Eleanor would not stay a second longer. They must leave at once and forget the horrible stone. She turned to Hopsgate. The mist was gone, and so was Tamsin. Eleanor was alone in the churchyard. And that concludes the reading.
Yay! Yay! Wild applause from the crowd. Yay! Excellent. Thank you so very much, Jane. Okay, now let's hear from MB.
Hello, I am MB. My book is Queerleaders. It doesn't come with these post-its. I did that myself. It is about a girl who gets outed in high school, and then she vows revenge on the football players who outed her by stealing their girlfriends and making their life hard. I live in Los Angeles with my partner, and this is my first book. So here we go. Okay. The next morning, Mac walked into school taking the long swig from the giant water bottle she had grabbed on her way out the door. Her mouth felt dry and she smirked to herself. The weekend had been spent juggling Beth and Daphne and Megan. Sure, with Daphne, there was no actual making out involved, just another weird woodworking project, but it was still tiring. As she walked down the hall, she saw Lila at her locker and practically skipped up to her. She leaned against her own locker, smirking at her friend. If anyone would appreciate her activities that weekend, it would be Lila. Hey, Mac said. Sorry I couldn't answer your calls over the weekend. I was so busy with Beth and Daphne and Megan. Gosh, Mac tipped her water bottle back and took a long sip as she shrugged. I think I'm dehydrated. Like, seriously, I lost so much spit over the weekend. Lila rolled her eyes so hard. Mac was surprised she didn't strain something. She frowned and kicked Lila's shoe lightly to get her attention, but she just sighed dramatically. Mac, I don't have time to talk, she said, closing her locker and finally gracing Mac with a glance. I have to be somewhere. Excuse me. Lila pushed past Mac, who stood there, blinking, mind trying to catch up with what had just happened. She hadn't heard Lila talk to her like that since the 4th grade when she got mad at when Mac won the spelling bee and she didn't. She turned around and followed her. Wait, where are you going? She asked as she caught up. Lila faced her dramatically, a sigh leaving her lips as she flipped her hair over her shoulder. If you must know, I've become a cheerleader. Mac stared at Lila for a moment just as she walked away again. Still, Max stood and looked where Lila had been standing before her weird announcement. There's no way. She must have misheard her. Mac ran after her. You're kidding, she said with a sarcastic laugh. There's no way you became a cheerleader. You can hardly get out of bed without tripping. Can you even use pom-poms without punching yourself in the face? Lila spun around. Mac almost ran into her with a sudden stop, eyes wide as she looked up. You know, I used to be a baton twirler, Lila said, waving her arms dramatically. Yeah, until you tried to do a triple axel back wrist twist and gave yourself a concussion. Lila blushed, stomping her foot angrily. You know it was humid that day. My baton was slippery. Plus, what do you expect me to do? It's not like you have time for anyone that isn't a cheerleader these days. Her voice broke a little and Mac stuttered in disbelief. To say she felt taken aback would be an understatement. She felt anger rise in her chest and she shook her head. You know that's not true. It isn't. You're so busy trying to get into their spankies that you hardly give me the time of day anymore. That's not true, Mac repeated in frustration. How did you even get on the team? They're not even having tryouts right now. Mac watched as Lila's face fell. She could practically see the wheels spinning in her head and she looked away for a moment and back at Mac. She sighed and crossed her arms. Well, I'm not necessarily a cheerleader, Lila said softly, eyes finding an interesting spot on the ceiling. I'm the Tau girl, but I still get to go to nationals and I still get a t-shirt. Lila spun away, walking towards the girls' locker room. Mac followed again, sputtering and trying to find her words. You're being ridiculous. She knew she made a mistake as soon as Lila turned towards her again, eyes wide and angry as she pointed to herself. Me? I'm being ridiculous? Ha! Lila pushed her finger roughly into the middle of Mac's chest, sending her stumbling back. That's rich coming from the girl who spends all her time making out with the same cheerleaders you used to make fun of. Mac pushed Lila's hand away and she poked her in the middle of her chest in retaliation, backing her up towards the lockers as she spoke. Listen, you're the one who encouraged this, Mac said before taking on a mocking tone. Oh, steal all the football players' girlfriends, you said. Now look what happened. You're getting all butthurt and tried to fix it by volunteering to take these girls' sweaty towels. Lila's back hit the lockers and she snarled, pushing Mac away from her. But Mac didn't move. She held her ground for once, even as Lila yelled back at her. Well, I'm sorry, I was trying to be a good friend by encouraging you to have confidence for once. And it's not like I actually thought you would be able to get your head out of your ass long enough to make yourself look presentable and actually get a girl at all, let alone a cheerleader. Mac flinched. Lila's words stunned more than she thought they would. All of her insecurities bubbled to the surface, doubt once again seeping into her brain as she tried to think of a response. All she wanted to do was push Lila and go cry in a corner somewhere, but she bit back her tears and tried to seem unaffected instead. You know what? Screw you, Max said, hating how her voice cracked as she backed away from Lila. Lila stomped over to the bin of dirty towels, gripping the edge and frowning at Mac. Screw you, Lila replied. Enjoy not being able to wash the smell of mediocre athleticism off, Mac shouted as she walked out. Lila pulled 2 dirty towels from the bin and used them like pom-poms as she yelled, "Rah, rah, fuck you, jerk." Mac stormed away, tears still stinging in her eyes. She decided spending her next class in the bathroom would be better instead.
Yay! Wonderful. Most excellent. Okay, Jane, why don't you join us again? And let's talk a little bit, shall we? Those were great readings. Thank you so very much. Audience members, please remember, if you've got questions for our fabulous authors, please go ahead and put them into the Q&A, and we will get to those and we'll have some discussion. Now, I've got some questions prepared, so I'm going to dive into mine while we're waiting for the audience. Let's start with something that's just a little bit fun. My question to you two is, roller skates or roller blades? Jane, go.
Not since I was about 7 years old.
Okay. All right. Now
my experience has not moved on since then, so I haven't come.
Okay, your choice between that and a skateboard.
Roller skates.
Roller skates. Okay. MB, how about you?
I was gonna say roller skates all the way. Before the pandemic Lovato or whatever, I played roller derby for like 8 years on quads. So I love roller skates, not rollerblades. I'm not good at rollerblades. Don't make me wear rollerblades.
Okay. Okay. So that whole weird balance thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Blades do not go on my feet. Yeah. And if your book had a theme song, what would it be, MB?
Oh, okay. For some reason, my first thought is Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus, which makes no sense, honestly. So, but it's what came to mind, so I'm going to stick with it.
Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Jane, how about you? You got a song that works with your book?
I can't really dig out a title, but probably something by somebody like Capercaillie, which is actually Scottish, whereas the book itself is based more on Welsh mythology. But yeah, something sung in a Celtic language would be the right one.
Okay. Okay. So here's a question specifically from our audience, specifically for MB. How do you think about writing for young adults as opposed to old adults?
I mean, I don't know. In a way, I don't really treat it differently. I kind of write the same way, same style, I maybe try to hold back on the curse words a little bit. And obviously when I'm writing YA, it's less steamy, for obvious reasons. But yeah, that's pretty much all I do. The difference between writing for YA and for adults is I just kind of tone down the cursing a little bit. Even then, I probably should turn down a little more. And then I just turn down the steaminess. But it's the same feels for the most part, just reacted differently.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, then my question for the two of you, and Jane, we're going to go ahead and start with you on this one. What was your inspiration for this particular book? What was that spark that made you say, aha, I've got it?
Comes in stages. It actually started with the idea of a pub between worlds, but it kind of drifted off in different directions. A pub between worlds does play a crucial role, but yeah, that's where it started, a meeting in a pub.
As all good books, I think, should start with a meeting in a pub, but hey. MB, how about you? Where did this come from? What was the spark?
I don't remember specifically where I got this idea. I think it kind of just incepted itself. It started out actually as a script for my thesis in college, and it was my teacher didn't like my previous ideas, and so I just came up with one off the top of my head that ended up being Queerleaders. And so after it was a script, I changed it into a book. And yeah, I think at the time I was watching a lot of Glee, honestly, and I think that's really what inspired Glee and lots of like 90s teen comedy kind of stuff.
Okay. Jane, question for you. Is this book part of a series? And if so, tell us the series arc.
No, it isn't part of a series, but yeah, none of my books none of the 2 series I've written actually started as series. It just having written them, ideas occur to me. I've got vague ideas that I could run a sequel to Silver Ravens, but don't hold your breath. Most of the books I've written as standalones, I have vague ideas for serials that never quite happen. So it's not impossible that a second book might follow, but I'm not planning on it.
Okay. As of right now, standalone, but never say never. Got it. Okay. What was your favorite board game as a child?
Me?
Does Battleship count as a board game?
It certainly does. And, you know, we can expand this out. It doesn't have to be a board game. It could just be a game. But yeah, I would consider Battleship a board game because you have to buy it in a box.
Okay, then definitely the Star Wars version of Battleship, though. The Star Wars version. That's my favorite.
Fancy. Jane, how about you?
Probably Risk. Once I worked out that taking control of Australia was the secret to world domination.
Really? Okay. How does that work?
Have you never played Risk?
Not in a very, very long time, and I admit I was not good at it.
Yeah, Australia is the key. It's only got 4 countries to it. You take control of that and you're getting 2 extra, and those initial, you can get control of it early in the game, and the 2 extra armies is enough to steamroller you through.
Well, there you go. There you go.
I'm keeping that in mind. That's good.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about, this is a question that was brought up at the earlier session today, and I found it kind of intriguing. And I'm going to change it just a tad bit, but talk to me about your relationships with your editors. Did your editors kind of take something in your book and just go, whoa, and change it big time? Or was it, you know, pretty standard? Tell me a little bit about editor relationships.
I can say my editor, Cindy Cressett, we've been working together for a long time, so we've got a pretty good working relationship. She has the problem that she's now been, because she's an American, lives in Atlanta. She's said she's been exposed to Britishism so long now that, because I write in British English, and then we kind of, the bits that won't get understood on the other side of the Atlantic, we change. Now she's looking at words and thinks, well, I know what they mean, but so do most people. So she actually has a group of uncontaminated Americans who she can run phrases by, like, do you know them? Editors generally, they want your book to be as good as possible. Your editor is your best ever reader. Nobody else will ever care that you use the word however 5 times in 3 pages, but your editor will probably pick it up and come back to you. They will read every sentence and think about it. And no other reader will ever care about your work quite as much as you and your editor.
My editor is Anne Roberts, and I mean, she's great, but it was mostly just a lot of references that I realized I needed to, that she pointed out that I needed to kind of update for today's audience, because even though I feel like high school both wasn't that long ago and was forever ago, you know, like I had a Cheney reference, Dick Cheney reference, and honestly, I'm not sure if average 13, 14-year-old would understand a Dick Cheney reference, so I changed that. That's most of the major help that she
Okay, good. And we've got a question here too. Can you tell us a little bit about how you build your fictional worlds. So how do you imagine your way into the vividly realized settings of your novels?
I mean, mine's about high school. So, you know, not much imagining needed, unfortunately.
Obviously, I've got to do an awful lot more building. For me, I would say that I construct the world like I construct a character. Like I have an idea for a story, and because I'm writing fantasy, I can make the world whatever I want. And so it's what elements do I need in the world for the story to work, and make sure that I can make them believable. The nice thing about making up worlds is you're not tied down by details that nobody else cares about. I can remember in one of my books, there was going to be someone on a boat downriver. And I was working at a timeline, okay, it's going to have to take 5 days. And I'd had a rough map, and I thought, eh. So I kind of got rubbed out the river, do a bit extra big loop in it. So, okay, now it'll take 5 days to get down. I mean, no reader actually cares where the river goes, but, you know, I can move towns around, you know, if I want them closer or further. Those things I have to get right. But I've got total freedom to construct them as long as it makes sense. I have to be able to justify to myself. And for that, there's quite a lot of research goes into all sorts of things, just how to build a world. It's part of writing in fantasy. But it's a plus and minus. The big plus is that nobody actually cares about the small details that you can swap around, like how long a river is.
Okay. Excellent. And MB, so this was your debut novel. Someone wants to know, how long did it take you to write it?
How long did it take me to write it? I mean, it started, like I said before, it started as a script. So I kind of had a very detailed outline already, which was super helpful. It was mostly just about getting my butt in the seat to translate it. So it was maybe, I want to say a year. It feels a little long because it's so short, but I think altogether it took about a year because I was writing other things in between it as well. Yeah, about a year.
Okay. All right, that kind of nicely segues into what is your best setting for writing? So, and let's talk pre-pandemic and pandemic. So, are you better working like in a cafe with lots of white noise around you, a library, in your own home, in your own office with doors closed? Where do you write best?
Complete silence. I don't even play music when I'm writing. In my own chair with plenty of tea on tap.
Okay. Just with a do not disturb sign on the door?
I don't go quite that far.
Okay.
I just glare whenever my wife walks into the room.
Which I'm sure goes over really well. And B, how about you? What's your best setting for writing, for actually doing the work of writing?
If I really have to focus and I have like a deadline that I need to hit, I have to, before the pandemic, I would have to go to like, a coffee shop, just get a coffee, put on some music and just focus, turn off my internet, put away my phone. These days, I sit in my office and I just put on my background noise and pretend it's a cafe. Sometimes I'll put on cafe background music to trick myself.
Okay. All right. And when you are writing, and again, this is for both of you, but MB, you can answer first since we're kind of on you. When you are writing, do you write and then go back to edit, or do you edit as you write? So what is that process like for you?
I just write all the way through, and then after I'm done, I'll speed read it through. I'm very bad at self-editing, if I'm being honest. I have a hard time rereading what I have already written, so sometimes I'll just write it and just send it off to someone if I'm being completely honest, which isn't the best thing to do, but I'll start editing myself more. So
Jane, how about you?
I always start each day reading what I've done the previous day. So it's going to be my first edit is what I wrote yesterday, but I will then write through the book. But I then always put the book aside for hope at least 3 months, ideally 6 months. And sorry, Alexa's just written in the background. And I put the book aside for a few months. Then I will go back and read it. And I'll say that's when I read what I've written rather than what I thought I was writing at the time. Because I'm actually writing, I'm so close to the words and the book and the story, and I'm envisaging things. I don't always realise that stuff hasn't got onto the page that I meant to write. I can see things like the pacing is wrong, that I've jumped from one scene to the next. It needs a bit more of a segue. I've made something too complicated. I can simplify it and take out a few pages. And when I'm actually writing, even in the days afterwards, I'm just too close to it. You can't see what's there. It's only after, it's usually I put the book aside 2-3 months, go back and just sit down as if I'm a reader. It's also when you're writing, because you write over a period of weeks, your own mood changes, things aren't following on. Whereas the reader's going to read it in the space of 2 days. And so the mood has to flow much more. So that's my own editing process.
Sure. And let's talk about the age-old question. Are you a plotter or a pantser? Do you have an outline that you're like, this is what I'm sticking to? I know the story, now I need to fill it in? Or do you just kind of go, I got characters, I got a computer, let's go to town? Which do you do? Jane, how about you?
I'm a plotter. I don't start writing till I've got the whole plot. Work it. And it's, for me, it's just the broad strokes of the plot, why everybody does everything, why things happen in the order they do, where it starts, where it ends, and what all the major plot points are between the two. I will know before I start. I can't imagine starting to write without that. But I will say that the main difference between me as a plotter rather than pantser is I do the first draft in my head, which is great because it's so easy to rewrite it and change it and swap it around. But it's a very broad brush strokes plot that I will have. And then the first thing I do is pretty much just do a scene outline, like first scene, second scene, and make sure that all the plot points I need will get covered in sensible scenes and swap them around. It's all in there.
Okay. I like that. Sensible scenes. MB, how about you?
I try to write with an outline. I have to have an outline. I have to at least know how it ends and how I get to the end. Otherwise, I get lost in the middle and I just lose motivation and stop writing. So I have to at least know how I get there to help me out. In the beginning, the plot usually has a lot of points, lots of scenes planned out. And then I just get impatient and I just start writing. So then like the middle of the outline is a little more bare bones, but as long as I know where I'm ending up, I'm usually fine. But I can't just go in blind either.
Have either of you had a situation where you're like, okay, I've plotted it out, I've outlined it, I know from how to get from A to B and so on and so forth, but then in the process of fleshing out those scenes and fleshing out that skeleton that you've created of your book, that you just go, oh God, my characters just took me in a completely different place. I need to stop, pull back, and relook at my plot. Has that ever happened to you? Either of you? Both of you?
It's happened to me a few times, and it's usually by that point, if the character tell me to go one way, then I already know how I'm gonna resolve the plot. You know what I mean? So it doesn't require too much switching around, but it's definitely happened.
You still got to take that moment and go, aha, wait, okay.
Yeah.
Jane, how about you?
I mean, basically, because I'm a plotter, I work from plot to character. I have the plot, and then for the various characters, I say, what sort of person would do that? So I craft my characters to the plot rather than start with the characters and see what they're going to do. As I was saying, people say, don't you end up with formulaic characters? As I was saying, like Shakespeare, he didn't start saying, young man talks to himself a lot. What happens to him is he got the plot from Hamlet, from Halstead, and then said, okay, what sort of person would act that way? Now, if I sort of have this plot and decide that nobody with a strand of human DNA would ever act that way, then I've got to throw the plot out and change the plot around. I've got to end up with believable characters. But equally, I'm sorry. My wife's just gesticulating at me. Yeah, but that's okay. No, that's it.
Okay. Well, speaking of your wife, somebody did ask in chat, do you let your wife read your work as you go, or do you wait until the project is complete?
I let her read it as I go, if she wants to read it. I'm in a reading group where we actually do post stuff as, we meet but now virtually online, and we put stuff up and read it. So, and my wife's in it because she also writes. Yeah, she does get the chance to read it. But the book I've just finished the first draft of what I hope will be my next novel, and she's not actually yet read it because she's been busy writing.
Okay. MB, how about you? Do you have any like pre-editor readers? Do you have beta readers, or just somebody that you trust that you go, here, read this, tell me if it's good?
oh yeah, no. I usually try to get at least to a certain point until I always get to a point, usually about the third chapter, and then again like a third of the way to the end where I get stuck. And so when I get to those points, I usually have I have a couple of people that I trust that I have read it and help me, basically. If I'm like, but does this make sense? And then it's fun. But it's definitely helpful.
Good. Excellent. Well, people, if you have questions out there, put them in the Q&A, because I'm running out of questions. So if you don't have any more questions, we're not going to be here much longer. But I do have the question for both of you, and that is, what's next? Tell me about your work in progress, or the next thing that you have a contract for publication, or maybe you don't have either and you're just going to kind of, I don't know, I thought maybe I'd go for a walk next week. But what's next?
So for me, I've just finished writing the first draft of a novel. I've put a submission into Bold Strokes. Yeah, at the moment it's in the stage of sitting aside for 3 months. I finished it about a month ago, so I'm not planning on looking at it before August. It was basically inspired by the Roman conquest of Britain. But the great thing about making up a world is I can put a more dynamic role for women in than would be the case in the Roman Empire. I can swap things around. I can balance things out the way I want them to, while in the still time definitely taking an inspiration. So I have got someone from a pseudo-Roman background meeting someone from a pseudo-Celtic background as the pseudo-Romans try to conquer the pseudo-Celtic land.
Okay, yeah. Just, those little trivial things.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing big. Emmy, how about you? What's in the hopper for you? What do you get? What do you have working on?
I just sent my second book off to my editor. So it's coming out in December, on December 16th. It's called Internet Famous. And it's another YA novel. It's about a high school girl who, it's not good. I'm like describing my new novel. It just flew out of my head. This is my luck. But basically, she has a rant on the internet about how the school won't cast her as the main lead in the school play. And she says it's homophobic. And overnight, she accidentally gets internet famous. And then she kind of has to deal with that and also try to get her ex-girlfriend back.
Okay, again, just those small trivial things.
Little things.
Yeah, really easy peasy, simple, not complicated at all. And Jane, we have one more question for you in the chat. This from Sherry, by the way. Her wife wants to know how many characters you've killed.
I've never actually kept a body count. Quite a few. Yeah. Tens of thousands probably over the course of the many books.
I was gonna say, are we looking at Game of Thrones level character?
Oh, in places, definitely, yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, I don't have any more questions at this point, so this is everybody's last chance to get one in. But I want to say thank you to both MB and Jane for taking the time today to spend this time with us, to share your Goldie Finalist books with us, and to thank everybody else for being here to enjoy and listen. And I want to put in a plug for our conference, which is coming up. It's going to be weekends in July. The Goldie Award ceremony is going to be July 31st, the last day. It always closes out our conference. I hope we'll see a lot of you there. You can just go to goldencrown.org, scroll down a little bit when you see the big red ribbon that says conference. If you click on that, you'll find all kinds of information about what's going on, including the schedule, how to register, so on and so forth. So I hope we'll see a whole bunch of you there. But again, thank you very much to MB and to Jane. Congratulations on being finalists.
Yeah, thank you.
Yay!
And thank you to Golden Crown.
Take care, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye. Bye.